keep the door to self-custody open fully. Like there's a straight up door for you to grab your money and get the fuck out. And I think we still have that window. We're still in the window where we can upgrade Bitcoin. We might not have that in 5 years.
Do it before you get extremely rich.
I'm concerned that there's a future where we can't scale self-custody. We all end up in banks. And even in that world, we still have better money.
The important part is that we have that indestructible base layer of Bitcoin. What would you do if Bitcoin wasn't there?
Before Bitcoin, I wanted to be a talk therapist. I wanted to be a psychologist. So I would have probably stayed on track to psychology. I would have probably been a psychology guy. I always had a thing for finance. Like I always liked money, and I liked money management and like financial engineering of sorts. Like thinking about money, I always find the topic interesting. But I think I would have probably gone down the psychology rabbit hole. I think that's sort of my other love.
It's an interesting thought experiment, because I think once you get Bitcoin, you get that it's such an amazing and elegant solution to the problem, or where do I put my financial energy? And then also so many more problems, like with censorship, resistance money and stuff like that. But even the simple problem, like I work somewhere, where do I save that energy without being a financial operative, a financial planner and stuff like that on the side? It's a big problem. And with Bitcoin, there are coming other problems up. And I saw your pinned tweet, and this is, I think, a topic that especially Bitcoiners are really, really curious and passionate about self custody, because when you get Bitcoin, you understand that self custody is really, really important. And I saw your pinned tweet on your profile, and you said it's like a video of you explaining like the 5 mistakes that Bitcoin are making with self custody. And I think you are also like really long term now in Bitcoin. You're a long term hodler. What should people like know and when they go about self custody, like what's the biggest hurdles they go through?
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely go watch that speech. Into my tweet, I kind of had a pretty good presentation where I went through 5 big mistakes I've seen people make. I would say the biggest mistake people actually make is they create a maze around their private keys that is so complex and paranoid that they themselves lose access. So that's like one version of the worst mistakes. If you're inclined towards paranoia, like many of us are, right? That's likely to be the thing you do, right? The other one is you do the lazy thing, right? The lazy thing is you take a screenshot of the 12 words on your phone and upload it to your Google Drive or iCloud. That's also the worst thing you can do. Like you can't be lazy and you can't be, extremely paranoid, right? Because both of them lead to, high risk of loss of funds. You just gotta use the most well-tested, most standard process. Follow the best practices, which is basically don't take a picture of the 12 words, right? Like whatever you do, and never put it into like a keyboard. Never type it in. If you lose your hardware wallet, right, or your phone, you type it into your phone. Okay, you recover it. You move your money out. Start a fresh one. Start a fresh wallet. I think that's generally good advice. There's details, right? But like generally, you just if you have to recover a wallet, move your money out, start a fresh wallet. Yeah, I mean, I think that those are like that's the easy answer, right? Just don't make a copy. Don't make a digital copy of your 12 words. Don't take a screenshot, and get into hardware wallets. I think if you're holding any significant amount of money in Bitcoin and crypto or whatever you're into, a $60, €60 Trezor T, or it's not gonna it's gonna be worth the risk, right? Like this is the equivalent of insurance, right? Like your bank's gonna charge you more per year than that. So just buy a hardware wallet, buy a Trezor. Don't buy a Ledger. Ledger sucks. Buy a Trezor. If you're more technical, get a cold card. But I would say like Trezor is a really good starting point, and yeah, just read the manual. I mean, it's not gonna take you days or anything. Within half an hour you'll be set up proper. An hour at best, but like or at worst. But like, yeah, I would just buy a hardware wallet. It's not a big deal. They're in the market, and they're great technology. They're great software, and like your computer is terrible. Your computer probably has malware on it. Your cell phone's a little bit better, but your like desktop computers and the laptops are really difficult to lock down, like pretty much impossible to secure. So cell phones are a little bit better, but not perfect. So like if you're getting to a point where you have like tens of thousands of dollars, even like I wouldn't put more than 10 grand on a cell phone, right? But like if you're putting like tens of thousands of dollars in your phone, it's way time to get a hardware wallet. And the last thing I'll say is like these markets are very volatile, right? One day you might think, oh, price went down 30%. I guess it's not a big deal, right? Like whatever. I'll upgrade my security later. And then 3 months later you wake up and the price has done a 10x or 5x and you have 50 grand on your phone, right? Or something like that. Way past time to upgrade your security. So like you want to have security that can handle like a 5 to 10x moving price upwards, right? So yeah, just get a hardware wallet. Hardware wallet covers most use cases, and then from there, just do more reading. Right? I'm working on a book. Hopefully by the end of the year, I'll have the self custody book down. But yeah, I mean, I think it's just and if it's too much work, and if you're too lazy, and if you don't want self custody, if you don't care, that's fine. Go use the best exchange in the game. Go get an ETF, Bitcoin ETF, or whatever. If you're, but like, don't half-ass it. You have to like actually be like, okay, I want this to be off the hands of third parties. I want this to be mine, and that means you got to take some responsibility and do a little bit of studying. But again, the hardware wallets are so easy to use; you almost have no excuse.
Yeah, I mean those learnings are really really good. I mean the first one, the last one you said with do it before you get extremely rich. Like a lot of people had Bitcoin back in the days, then they forget about it. They don't even know where they are, or they lost it through some hack because they were not careful with them because they were like worth maybe like 100 euros back then or dollars, and then all of a sudden they shoot up crazy, and then it gets to a point where attackers having an incentive to get them, and then they got them, and then they're like, oh, I lost it because I don't not take care of them. Like, get your Bitcoin security right before the 5x, 10x, 20x. And as you also said, I think a lot of people actually do that. Just like it's so usual, like every time I get like an airplane ticket and there's like a number, I just take a picture with my phone to like, if I don't get the email or something, then I have the thing on my phone. But don't do this with your Bitcoin private key, with your recovery phrase. It's so important to not store, like you get a hardware wallet, you get your yeah, plate you somewhere where you like actually save your recovery phrase, and then you go ahead and save it online, or it does not make sense. Like if you save it online
Yeah,
somewhere, you
it's
can leave it on
incredible how many
exchange
people do
also.
that and
It's
how
that like
often they do
uh,
it.
yeah, it's yeah, and especially with AI coming, like if someone gets
Oh
access
yeah,
to your pictures somehow, they just run like an AI picture. Like even if you
yeah.
can hide it, your words somehow in the picture, and you remember, oh, well,
No,
I
no,
have
no.
it on this picture, and I know that because in the beginning when I had no
Hmm.
clue, I did that. And I was like, I will hide my seed phrase in the picture so you cannot see it nicely only if you zoom in. Like th- those AI programs will zoom in and they
Yeah,
will scan those pictures and they will find your keys
yeah. I
really
think they
soon.
will. I think they will. It's just a terrible idea. Just don't take a picture of your 12 words. Never. For no reason.
Uh,
There's no good reason to do that.
do you see a future where everybody is key? Like I always do it like when if you zoom out like 20, 30 years in the past, nobody knew how to
Hmm.
send an email or stuff like that. And now everybody knows how to send an email, set up Google accounts, set up
Hmm.
all the basic things we're doing right now. Will it be the same for
There's still
key
people that can't
management?
send email. There's like probably like I would say 30, 40% of the world still probably can't send an email. I would imagine 20, 30%. Yeah, yeah.
Right.
They just don't have like they just haven't been exposed to it. They're just getting exposed to it now, or they're really old and they're just like not interested, or just they never care because they had somebody they could call to deal with that stuff. Google Cloud, all this stuff, like even that, like to us, it's a generational shift. Eventually, a lot of people will be like comfortable maybe with a Bitcoin wallet, but the thing is, self custody is changing, right? So in 50 years, on chain Bitcoin is probably gonna be, if we're in a hyper Bitcoinized world, on chain Bitcoin is gonna be something that only really institutions use, big exchanges, big liquidity providers. Is gonna be a settlement layer, and self custody is gonna have to bubble upwards, and self custody is gonna be somewhat different. We're trying to keep it tied to the 12 word system because it's already like we've already trained the generation into the 12 words. The 12 words work. They are the easiest thing we have to self custody. So maybe that'll continue, but self custody is gonna change a little bit. It's I think with Lightning we're seeing that there's sort of there's differences in, like, if you want very cost effective self sovereignty, like you don't want to be paying $3 or minimum to move a Bitcoin or move Bitcoins on chain. If you want it cheaper than that, then there's some trade offs involved, even if it's attached to the 12 words. So I mean, I don't know where self custody is going to be in 30, 40 years. I hope that we still have self custody. I think it's very important for us to defend it. I think at the very least we'll have much better money and much better banks potentially. But I think I could see a world where there's one technology that's really cool. It's like it's very early stages for it, but it's like basically these little devices they're like hardware wallets, and they have like an input to your phone, and then they have like an output to your phone, and then like an input in the back, and then you can get three of them, and then like you just sort of sign with one, sign with the other one, sign with the other one, and chain them together, plug them to your phone. It's just like it's gonna be something like that. They're gonna make everything physical. It has to be, I think, like a magical stone that you have that you bang against another magical stone and your money moves, right? Or it's gonna be, if you have a chip in your head, it's gonna be part of your multi-sig. It's gonna be like a key here and a key here, and you just click, and your money moves, right? I don't know how that's gonna work, but I think the future of self custody is some sort of version of multi-signature or multi-key setup. It's going to be something I mean, security, digital security today is like that. It's something you have, something you own, and something you know. So something you know, no, something you have, something you are, and something you know. So a password, um, the big corps want you to do biometric. I don't like biometric. I don't recommend biometric, but that's one of the ways to do it. And then something you have. So hardware wallet, password, and then like maybe a chip or maybe a fucking your thumb, or like retinal scan, or you know whatever, right? I think you're fine with like password and hardware. I don't think that you really need a third, but yeah, I think that's the big promise, right? Like I think we need to sort of think a lot about self custody in the future. I think that's a big problem. That's one of the reasons I'm a big fan of covenants. Right now, there's like a soft fork conversation inside of Bitcoin about like creating covenants, which is a new technology that lets us scale self custody better. So I mean, if you're a Bitcoiner, like a hard Bitcoiner, and you're looking to, if you're curious about that, look it up. Look up covenants on Bitcoin. But yeah, I mean, I think that's the way that it's gonna work if we can figure it out how to scale self custody to billions of people. It's gonna be a couple of things. You're gonna have a rock and a phone, and you're just gonna bang them together and move your money, right? And it's probably gonna have spending limits and stuff. I mean, this is all software. We can program in anything that people really need, if there's demand for it. I think at the end of the day.
It's interesting to think about the future, and you also said like the layer one will be only the settlement layer because fees will shoot up even more, as I also think so, and it's also
Right.
necessary to keep Bitcoin secure. Someone has to pay for the whole security of it, and if you have a really important transaction, I don't know, like the transaction from father to the son to like give some of the whole net worth to him or something like that. I mean, it would be easy to just exchange keys, but something like that. Then it makes sense to do it on chain, but then it moves up. How do you see like the layers on? I mean, it's really hard to foresee the whole future on layers and how we scale Bitcoin when like everybody has it on a Bitcoin standard. But how do you see us buying a coffee at a coffee place in like 20, 30, 50 years on Bitcoin? Do you see like only one, two layers? Some people are like, oh, there will be like 10 layers on top of Bitcoin. I heard so many crazy theories about scaling Bitcoin that it's interesting where we are going. How do you
Yeah,
see
I think
scaling Bitcoin and layer
so the way that I
technology
see
on
it
top?
right now is, it's not that different than normal money, right? If you're like a multimillionaire, right? You don't carry your money in your phone. That's ridiculous. You also don't have it at home, right? Not necessarily. Like you might have a certain portion of your wealth, like in your like as the value of your home. Like your home is part of your money. Your home is part of your wealth anyway, right? But you don't have all your money in your home. You might have a vault with some money, right? Like a portion, like maybe a decent chunk of your money, but not all of it, right? I think your wallet is a relatively low security thing, right? Like you can be walking down the street in the wrong place and somebody will mug you. What are you gonna do? Just fucking take the money, right? You wouldn't carry all your money in your phone, all your money in your pocket, right? So I think people will naturally bridge those frames of security into Bitcoin and say, well, okay, there's like there's spending wallets for Bitcoin. Like today we are used to the Lightning Network. The Lightning Network is a way to move money very fast. I think the Lightning Network seems to be moving towards infrastructure as well. So it'll probably become like back end payments sort of network between big institutions in Bitcoin or big wallets or big exchanges, even small wallets. It doesn't have to be that big, but it'll become like a professional thing because it's really hard to like run a Lightning node, right? And so most likely the wallets that we'll be using, as far as the technology that I'm aware of today, it'll be eCash tokens with mints behind them. So like it'll be like eCash Bitcoin banks, and the Bitcoin banks are gonna be right now. One of the keywords there is a Fedimint, and a Fedimint is like this federation. It's a mint. It's a federation that mints an eCash token. These eCash tokens are like digital certificates. They're like digital cash certificates. They're digital papers, right? And they are denominated like, let's say, 1 sat, 10 sats, 1,000 sats, 1,000,000 sats, 100 million sats, right? They're denominated like cash, and then you can pass them around digitally, and they work like cash in the sense, and they don't have blockchain, so they don't have scaling problems, and they don't have a blockchain, so they don't have privacy problems. So they're very private, very scalable, but they have one big trade-off, and it's that somebody has to mint them. So they have a third-party custody risk. So there's a counterparty that's collateralizing those eCash tokens with real Bitcoin. And so I hope that we can find ways to use Bitcoin's smart contracting languages and its scripts to like restrict these banks from rugging people, right? So like make rug pull resistant banks potentially, right? But I think that's likely what's going to happen. There's going to be banks that are going to offer like Bitcoin banks that are going to offer eCash wallets that you're going to be able to send more money freely. These wallets already exist. That like this is already here. It's just not in use yet because it's still kind of early stages. But it's here. There's wallets. You can look up eCash Bitcoin, and like there's 10 wallets you can download and play with, right? So and they work, and the money moves, and it's free or basically free, and it's fast, and you just sort of you can make it work with NFC, and like just potentially tap a payment sort of machine from a retail store and just have it process the payment. Like that's in theory as easy as it could get. Um, so I think that's the future of spending for coffee. Now you're gonna have maybe like a harder wallet in your computer or something like that. Like maybe you have like a Lightning node, relationship with a Lightning node provider like Phoenix, right? Phoenix is really interesting because they give you 12 words. If Phoenix the company goes down, you can grab those 12 words, put them on Electrum, recover your money. But they manage the liquidity side of Lightning. They deal with the complicated stuff, but you can send through them, right? So like that's like a sort of Bitcoin bank relationship where they don't really have custody. They have like custody for like a couple of seconds, and then they fill up your account. Like it's like risk minimized. It's trust minimized, risk minimized relationship, right? That's likely going to be like the medium sized payments, right? And then the big size payments is going to be Bitcoin on chain, and maybe there's going to be like covenants around Bitcoin on chain. A covenant is like we basically come together with a bunch of people and pull our money into a little smart contract, and then that that's like that smart contract settles balances with other entities and stuff. It's a little complicated to explain, but like we'll probably like be sharing UTXOs with other people through a covenant. It's like virtual UTXOs. So I mean, I think that there's a lot of innovation happening on that front. Assuming that we can sort of maybe do some updates to Bitcoin that I think are necessary, and they're getting consensus. We're sort of in the process of that. A worst case scenario is just going to be on chain stuff and multi-sigs, right? So yeah, I mean that's kind of how I see it right now. I think we're in a transition period, and a lot of people are just going to have it on ETFs, right? Like it's just going to be ETFs, and it's going to be Bitcoin exchanges or big centralized straight up custodians. Hopefully, we can transition the market out of some of that, but a lot of people are just going to not care to have self custody, or it's not going to fit their thread model. Maybe they're too famous, maybe they're too known, maybe they're too rich, and they trust the state, their local jurisdiction, and their local jurisdiction maybe is not that bad, right? And so I think we're going to have a full range of options, but yeah, as far as self custody, those are the three main technology branches that I see developing.
Yeah, I also think so, and I'm always like I'm really always really 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 bullish on the main layer, and I always try to get that point across that the main layer is just so great. And you can always like there's like Bitcoin ETFs, there's Lightning, there's so much stuff going on, the Fedimint, what you're talking about, and there will be probably hundreds of new technologies on top of Bitcoin. There will be technologies that won't succeed, there will be technologies that will succeed, but the important part is that we have that indestructible base layer of Bitcoin, where everybody agrees on that one, and then on top of that everybody can compete, technology wise, application wise, client wise. What is the best spending wallet, what is the best setup for individuals? And there will obviously, as you said, people that will have, oh, I have my ETF and I have maybe my local currency, as if they uh, go on for that long of a time. If local currencies are existing, then some people only see Bitcoin as a store of value, but then it moves to the medium of exchange phase, and then people also view it
Uh-oh.
differently. Like there's a lot of things happening, but I always want to make the point that the main layer is so important, and then we can have things on top of that. What's your thoughts actually on the Fiat survival? How long can it survive? And there was one interesting question coming up yesterday on my feed. Will Bitcoin extend or shorten the life of Fiat, or does it even matter to the life of Fiat because it's destructing itself
Yeah, I
anyways?
think I see the United States as sort of drunk on debt, and I don't think they're stopping. I don't think they're interested in AAA or AA. Alcoholics Anonymous. Um, I think that I don't know that their society is healthy enough to reform itself before they collapse the dollar, but they're gonna try. And the collapse of the dollar would be a pretty cataclysmic event. I think it's gonna be a huge sort of reshuffle of wealth, and it'll probably lead to a return to hard money because nobody trusts anybody else. you know, so like it'll probably be the rise of gold. It'll probably be the rise of Bitcoin. Now there's a catch, which is the crypto dollar, right? The crypto dollar is Tether, it's USDC, and then there's like this whole branch of CBDCs. I think the CBDCs will fail because they're too ridiculous, right? Like they're like they're like the worst money you could imagine, right? Like just the shittiest money, like spending limits. It has negative interest rates, expiration dates on your money. They track you everywhere, charge you carbon credits. Like it's gonna be just suck, right? Like everybody's gonna want to dump that as fast as they can. Anybody that has any significant money certainly is not going to be in a CBDC, right? And so I think CBDCs will fail, but stablecoins, people like stablecoins because they kind of feel like cash, but they're digital and they're international. And I think stablecoins are a significant player in the market. And I mean, it's obvious, right? Like the numbers say it, and the question is, does a crypto dollar extend the lifespan of the dollar because it lets it get into the furthest reaches of the globe's markets where normal banking system can't get, right? Like how much Tether is being used in Brazil, Argentina, and Venezuela, and how much impact does that have on the U.S. economy? Tether, who issues the most popular stablecoin, is a bigger purchaser of U.S. bonds than Mexico. They own more U.S. bonds than Mexico. So like Tether is a big player now. They're installed. They've made a deal with the devil, so to speak, which is the dollar, right? And they're in cahoots, and like they're married now. And if the federal government goes and like swats Tether, their bonds are gonna crash, and that's gonna hurt, and that's gonna destabilize the economy. Like those two are already bonded. There's already bond between them. So I think the likely scenario is that the crypto dollar continues and becomes normal and beats out the CBDCs, and it becomes like a surveillance dollar that they can, like digital dollar that they can like shut down your account if they decide that but they might not be able to do like all the other stuff they want, like negative interest rates, expiration dates. They probably won't be able to do that. If they do that to Tether's going to die because it's just they're just terrible ideas. Like there's terrible ideas all around. And so in that case, I think the dollar could extend a little bit, could live a little bit further. But at the end of the day, it's about the interest rate. The US, the interest on the debt is already like over 50% of their tax income of the United States. If they don't slow that down and reverse it hard like now, if they don't do like a 180 right now, that's gonna go parabolic, and the U.S. is gonna end up defaulting on their debt eventually, right? And they're gonna have to go into austerity, and it's gonna shrink the U.S. economy. It's just gonna spiral down, right? So even with Tether, I don't know that the dollar can survive, but it could last another 20 years. It could last another 30 years. We don't know, right? Like the pound has lasted like 300 years. Even though the average lifespan of fiat is like 40 years, the pound has lasted 300, right?
I'm super excited to announce that this podcast got the first ever sponsor. 21 Bitcoin is Bitcoin only from day one, and they teach and preach self-custody. This is my go-to exchange when someone asks me, oh, where can I buy my Bitcoin from? This is the easiest entry for Bitcoiners. And if you want lower fees, plus at the same time support this podcast, use code Robin and click the link in the description. There's an interesting calculation you can make. I just made it from my Twitter account. I never saw it before, but probably people made something similar before. I wanted to see how long it takes if you make $100 million a day and pay back the US debt to pay back 10% of that debt. And you need to earn or save or spend the debt back for 100 years every day, spending $100 million, and then you pay 10% of it back. And this is like an interesting thought experiment. Like 100 years is like more than our life expectancy is. Then 100 million a day is just a crazy amount. Most people don't even get to a million net worth over their time, over the whole year, over the whole time lifespan. And this is just 10%. And this problem gets worse every day. I was posting a meme with the $33 trillion of debt, and someone was posting a bit behind, oh, that's already old. It's like 34 now. And soon it will be like a 35 and stuff like that. And it's shocking. And it's like, how long can this go on? 20 years, 50 years, 100 years?
It might not last
It's
5.
crazy.
I think it's going parabolic, and it's a compounded interest rate problem, and as far as I understand, and Einstein said, like, compound interest is one of the wonders of the world. If you're a benefactor of compound interest, you're probably going to be rich. If you're paying compound interest, you're probably going to be poor, because it's very sneaky, and then when it goes parabolic, it goes parabolic. And so I don't see how they're going to turn it around, man. Like, the United States is so dysfunctional. Maybe the next election will bring, like, maybe Trump will figure something out, but I don't know, right? Like, maybe he won't, right? So yeah, it's pretty sus.
What do you see as the most profound change that will happen on a Bitcoin standard? I feel like zoom out and we are assuming the fiat standard actually dies off, and we are in this Bitcoin kind of world in, like, let's say 50 years, 100 years. What's the most profound change for society, for business, for day-to-day life? I heard someone saying yesterday on a reply on me, like, we're going closer to type 2 civilization, where energy is so abundant that it's just free for everybody because prices are falling so rapidly. So, like, there's so many interesting experiments in that and deflationary system. What's your thoughts on
there's
that?
a lot of really profound things that could happen under a better monetary system, or under a sound monetary system. But I think the one that is, let's say, closest to my attention, and the one that or closest to my heart, is it's basically the demonetization of corruption. I heard somebody say it like that. So basically, fiat currency was invented something like the 1400s. I think by the Medici, or by, like, the maybe not the Medici. I think it was the Italians that invented it. Anyway, I don't know, but it was invented like the 1400s, and then the Bank of England took it to the next level, and then, like, nationalized fiat money, right? And that was, I think, to finance the First World War, or something like that. And the result is we ended up in these democratic systems, which have, like, the octopus of federal banks in the middle of them. And what ends up happening is politicians get the country into debt. In other words, get the tax base into debt in order to pay off people that support their particular brand of politics or their particular career. And so they're stealing from the public to subsidize their own careers, and, like, creating a dependent class. And that's a really profound corruption. Um, that ends under a monetary standard, like under a sound money standard, because that money can't hold value. It can't hold purchasing power, and so it it inflates very fast, and people dump it, and people don't accept it, and people have to buy stuff with it, and it dies a relatively fast death. And so, countries and political systems have to become fiscally responsible. Otherwise, people are just gonna go buy whatever the fuck else they can. Especially if there's like a sound money that they can move around and hide well enough and protect themselves with, and like flee to another country with, right? Like Bitcoin accelerates the collapse and the end of the fiat monetary standard, and that is about as profound as it gets in terms of money. And it means that political systems have to be fiscally responsible, which means they have to be sane. They have to consider time, and they have to be consider the consequences of their actions. The behavior of politicians can no longer be detached from reality. It has to be attached to reality, because otherwise the consequences become visible fast enough, presumably, right? And people's memories will be fresh with the failures of politicians that screwed them and devalued their money. And that's already happening all over Latin America. And it's going to happen in the United States. It's just a matter of time until it happens in the United States. In fact, it's happened over the past 2 years. 5 to 6% official inflation is pretty significant for them. So I think that's the trend, and I think that's the deepest change that has other consequences, right? Because if a society is fiscally sane, then they start investing in energy, and they start lowering the cost of energy, not increasing it, right? Like American energy infrastructure for civilians is generally pretty bad. Like the grid sucks; it's very expensive, you know. But there's other countries where they just like I think Uruguay. I'm not sure if it's Uruguay or Paraguay. One of these countries in Latin America that doesn't have an ocean, but they have I think they have a huge river, so they just build the most ridiculous dam, and they have so much energy they have to export it because they can't consume it, and so some of the biggest Bitcoin mines are there, but yeah, they export energy to Brazil and like to neighboring countries. So that's what happens when you think forward. Right? What happens when you have a sane civilization, a sane society, right? You make long-term investments to lower your energy costs, right? Like that's the first thing you should be doing. So I think the energy is like a side effect of that, But returning sanity to societies that are basically drunk in fiat money, I think that's the most profound change I can see.
I think it's also a beautiful picture to see that currently we are on like a drunken mood where we are just spending money and it feels like unreal. And then there's inflation coming, there's war coming, there's so many consequences of that unresponsible, irresponsible fiscal policy that
Yeah.
triggers and trickles down in all the life areas basically. And maybe for like the average Bitcoin out there that actually understood Bitcoin, they are like buying Bitcoin every month, they are converting their fiat constantly in Bitcoin, they are running a node, they're orange billing friends and family, they are obviously doing a lot already to accelerate that trend. For me, it's like inevitable. It's like Bitcoin will come and some money will be the standard, but we can influence maybe how fast this goes. Like maybe we can accelerate the whole thing. For that Bitcoiner watching, do you see or do you have anything that you like? What else can we do? What can Bitcoiners do to accelerate this Bitcoin adoption? Maybe faster, maybe better, make the transition to a new
Hmm.
system smoother. And yeah, do you have
Yes.
something there, or like what are
No,
you
I
doing
think people
to do it?
need to look into covenants.
Well,
So let me give you a specific example of why I think covenants are important and what is required to get them, right? So a Bitcoin covenant is a new a Bitcoin contract, let's say Bitcoin that says that any money that you put into that contract, let's say your own Bitcoin wallet, can only move 10% a month out, right? And it also has another spending condition, which is that if this particular key, which is maybe like deep in cold storage, like buried in a hole in your house, right? Like, or a multi-sig that's like in 3 countries, if those keys sign, they can move all the money out. But otherwise, the normal key, the one that maybe is in your computer, can only move 10% a month out, right? So it's putting spending restrictions on your on-chain layer 1 Bitcoin wallet. Why is that important? Anytime you make an on-chain Bitcoin transaction, even if you're just trying to move 1% of that wealth, you actually have to move 100% of the wealth. When you spend an unspent transaction output, when you move Bitcoin from address A, like if you move like 1% of your Bitcoin from one address A to address B, you move 1% to this address, and then the other 99% moves to another address of yours that's under your wallet. But that means you're moving all of it. You're just reshuffling it, and 99% comes back to you. That means you're risking 100% of your Bitcoin every time you make a transaction. That's actually ridiculous from a security perspective. There's no financial system that we can remember that works like that. If you move more than 10 grand in any US bank, they're gonna start calling you, be like, bro, you okay? You get kidnapped, right? If somebody taps, if somebody moves more than $100 from your chip when you tap purchase something, it's probably not going through unless you call them and tell them. So spending conditions are a very, very good way of securing and protecting Bitcoin. Bitcoin can't do that today. On-chain, like Bitcoin consensus rules don't allow that to happen today. Satoshi originally had opcat in Bitcoin, which let us do that, but then he had like a panic because he realized that there was like extra complexity, or he thought there was extra complexity with other opcodes, not just opcat, and he just like bulk closed like a bunch of opcodes or things that gave more power to Bitcoin contracts, right? It's been 15 years. We have studied covenants enough. CTV has pretty good review. Opcat is very well reviewed. There's a lot of developer consensus around Opcat, for example. And we can turn them back on. The problem is they require a soft fork. A soft fork just means that if there's enough demand in the market, we can activate it, and it doesn't change. It doesn't break compatibility with people that don't want to activate it. But you need to. We're gonna need to soft fork them in. It's good. It's a lot less code than SegWit and Taproot. Taproot and SegWit were very complex software packages, actually, like very profound changes to Bitcoin. CTV, very simple, very, very simple, like 10 lines of code. The best package right now is Lenhance. Lenhance is CTV and 2 other small upgrades that fix a lot of problems with Lightning. It makes Lightning symmetric, so you don't have some of these inbound liquidity issues in the same way. They solve a lot. They make Lightning programming a lot easier, and they scale. They basically let us do this sort of sharing of UTXO. So it makes some of the estimates I've heard is like it makes Lightning 100 times more scalable than it is today. So this is really useful stuff, but it's gonna take people understanding the benefits and like getting tired about the fact that they're not getting implemented, right? Because that's how it worked the other 2 times. People have to be like, come on, give me some covenants, right? And then the downsides, all the risk you'll hear, like, oh, but what about like recursive covenants? The idea of recursive covenants is you restrict the flow of Bitcoin into some sort of like malicious covenant forever, right? There's been multiple bets, public bets, of anybody that can come up with a malicious covenant, and so far nothing. And the worst case scenarios that people can come up with for a bad use of a covenant can already be done with multisig. Multisig can already do all of those. So there's no real downside. It's just that there's like this resistance there's this like consensus issue. We have to understand it. And so I think that's probably the best thing we can do for the future of Bitcoin right now is to get covenants in. And probably Lenhance is the best. I'm concerned. I'm concerned that there's a future where we can't scale self custody and we all end up in banks. And even in that world, we still have better money. So we have a banking system on top of sound money that governments can't hyperinflate. That's really good. That's a huge. That's a huge impact in the future. That's like 200 years of benefits. But it would be a lot better if we could keep the door to self custody open fully. Like there's a straight up door for you to grab your money and get the fuck out. And I think we still have that window. We're still in the window where we can upgrade Bitcoin. We might not have that in 5 years. BlackRock having 1% of all Bitcoin is not good for softwares. You know what I mean? Because maybe they don't like the software. You know, and covenants make self custody at scale more secure. So like they might be disruptors to BitGo or to BlackRock because you don't need to trust a very well reputable, legally constrained party to do self custody. No, on chain Bitcoin sort of consensus rules will constrain the custodian in a covenant. So you don't need these regulated parties that are like vulnerable to their local governments, right? We can actually Bitcoin becomes a jurisdiction of its own that restricts those wallets locally. Doesn't have to externalize that control. Doesn't have to externalize that restriction over that wallet. So I think covenants are very very cool. I think we need them. We'll be fine without them, but like we could be a lot better off with them. That's the thing that I think Bitcoiners could do for Bitcoin and for the future.
I think it's a great point, and so it's a. I mean, the more overall or abstract point here, as you made it, is like get educated deeper in the Bitcoin ecosystem and discuss and debate more on also the software part of things, not just like, oh, I'm having self custody, I'm learning. Like this is all great stuff, like having your family orange build, having your friends orange build, getting more people in the ecosystem, buying Bitcoin, running a node, but then also like going deeper into the discussion, like where is the future of Bitcoin going, and also developing the ecosystem around it, because
Yeah,
we're just really early on, and there's so much happening that we don't even know about. Like I think we're around before the 2000 years in the internet era, and like the iPhone is coming out in 2007.
mm-hmm.
It's like 10 years later, and we don't even know what amazing things will happen to Bitcoin in like 10, 20, 30 years. On top of it, what killer applications will be implemented on top of it. It's an extremely exciting time I think we're in, and it's I'm always kind of, when I talk with Bitcoiners and when I research in the sphere, I'm kind of thankful and grateful that I am like living right now in that moment. There are a lot of great moments to live in the past also, where like a lot of fundamental shifts are happening. But I think we are also now living in
Mm-hmm.
kind of a very
Yeah,
fundamental
very exciting
shift
times for
in the
sure.
world.
And like just to be clear, like this message that I just gave about covenants, that's for Bitcoiners. That's for like people that have already been around for a while and they're looking to do their tour of duty. They're looking to like contribute civically to Bitcoin, to the Bitcoin society, right? But like if you're new or if you're just entering, um there's a few ways you can help. One of the things the world Bitcoin needs is more Lightning developers. We need a lot more Lightning developers. That infrastructure is going to be very important for the future. We need Bitcoin developers in general, but Lightning developers right now in particular, we need a lot more of. There's a lot to do in Lightning, but it can be really great if we get it through, right? The other thing is like whatever your talents are, there's probably a way you can, you know, include the Bitcoin cheat code in it, right? So like create like a Bitcoin brand of your business, or start accepting Bitcoin in your business, or grab your like put 5% of your business's treasury into Bitcoin, right? Or like there's probably 50 things you can do. There's probably some value that you can contribute to the Bitcoin economy, to the Bitcoin society, without like hurting your normal life, right? And so I would say consider contributing. And the reason you should is not because out of some, great sense of virtue or because of some charitable humanitarian motive. No, no. If you do that, your Bitcoin will the value of your Bitcoin will benefit from your input, right? But it doesn't just benefit you, it benefits the whole of Bitcoin, right? So everything that we do collectively raises the value of Bitcoin if we do good things for it and we make it easier to use and to understand and so on, right? So you have an investment. If you have any Bitcoin, you're invested in its future. So there's literally no downside to you contributing some of your talent in whatever shape that takes to the Bitcoin economy. Um, so yeah, that's something else you could do.
And it's also beneficial outside of your Bitcoin. I always put the example of the Bitcoin hotel.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe you have seen it in Germany, the hotel in Blochen in Princess Bitcoin Hotel, because he took an existing business like this. This has been around, I think, 30 years. It's like a family business, really established hotel, and they took a risk with rebranding it. They did not lose any customers. The other way happened. They actually gained a lot of new faces. I would never have been in that hotel
Right.
if it wouldn't be for Bitcoin. There are like conferences happening, there are deep learning sessions happening with like 50 people, 100 people. We are talking now about them in the podcast. The same happened to El Salvador. Who would have talked about El Salvador in 2020? Then they made it
Yeah.
legal tender in 2021, and now when the Nayib Bukele a few days ago, I think 2 days ago, was re-elected, all of a sudden everybody in the world kind of talks about him. And I mean, we have the lens of Bitcoiners, so it's more obvious for us, but the numbers don't
Yeah.
lie. Like tourism is up big time in El Salvador. So that's like, even if you contribute to Bitcoin, you do something that is signaling to the world that you are in this and you want to contribute, and this signal gives you something back. And this is something amazing if you can participate in that growing ecosystem. And this actually leads me to the question that is our end routine. In our end routine, the previous guest
Oh
asked the
wow.
question for the next guest, and our last guest was Jeff Booth, and he talked about also that on the podcast, how he uh, transformed his time more and more into Bitcoin, and how he encourages now people to get involved in this Bitcoin space and in this Bitcoin industry. And so his question is like, how much percentage of your like total time right now spent in a day is spent in Bitcoin?
Yeah, probably on average 8 hours a day, I'd say. I mean, I listen to like two podcasts a day. Like two or three podcasts a day.
Wow,
And then I'm
very
making
good.
two podcasts a week. And then I'm on Twitter tweeting about Bitcoin like probably a couple of hours a day. And then I'm often thinking about it. So like, and I've been doing this for 10 years. So like, it's my career, right?
It
Like, yeah,
compounds.
like I'm kind of useless without Bitcoin. I would have to start from scratch. Um, but I've benefited from it greatly too. So I'm happy. I'm not rich or anything, but I'm happy, right? I'm satisfied. I'm I'm comfortable. So I think yeah. I mean, I definitely put in a lot of time. I wish I'd learned how to code younger because I would probably be a programmer, a Bitcoin programmer. I managed to sort of manage projects, Bitcoin development projects. I got a little project here and there, um, but yeah, like that's there's different ways to contribute time, but like yeah, I'd say that's like if you're getting in, if you're young and you're hungry, yeah, learn to program. Try to become a Bitcoin Core developer and at least sort of make your name there, or like a Lightning developer, and that's a great way to contribute.
Yeah, there's so many ways you can
Yeah,
get into
so
Bitcoin
levels.
and
Yeah.
um, make a contribution to the community, but also get something back from the community. It's like both ways. Um, First of all, thank you, Juan, to be on my podcast. Where can people find you? Where can people
Yeah,
get in
so
touch with you?
juangalt.com, JUANGALT.com. That's my flagship website. I've written a variety of essays, like long form essays on various topics that I think are important there. I also publish my podcast there in English, and it it also the podcast also goes on Spotify and on Fountain app and on Podcast Addict, like most of the apps except right now iTunes. We're not on iTunes yet. And then I have a Spanish version of the podcast if anybody's listening or has friends in Spain or Latin America or something that you want an orange pill. Send them my Spanish podcast. Um, that one's also on my website. It's not on the apps yet, but I will. Well, it's not on Spotify yet, but it'll start going through the feed soon. So yeah, we've got that podcast, and then yeah, follow me on Twitter. Twitter's good. Yeah.
Perfect. I think Twitter is like the space where the most overlapping community of Bitcoin
Right.
actually is right now.
Yeah, for
Feels
sure.
like. Thank you for being
Awesome.
on.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you, Robin.